And everyone. So today I want to show you what we did in class, and we said what went wrong when we did things in a certain way. So when you define a function that is supposed to be, and I'm going to switch this into Python so it can give me the colors. When you define a function, we call add two numbers like that, and then it's supposed to be taken numbers as num1, and I want you guys to be selective about the variable names that you're passing to the function, which they're actually called parameters. So now we are going to add these two numbers, and I'm going to store the sum of these numbers in a variable that's called sum of, and then here I'm just gonna do the sum1 and sum of num1 and num2. And then if suppose we print the sum of two nums like that, and I call this function here so what can go wrong like that. This is the same folder, that's correct, Pwd. Okay, so if I call this guy here, right, I need to do sum of two nums, and I can actually move the screen here so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna make this even bigger. That would be Python sum of, what could go wrong, like that. We have not called the function yet, so let me call the function. So we have add two numbers like that outside this function here in a different line on the same level. Otherwise the function call will be inside the function definition. So you have to make sure that the function is outside this function here. Outside means on the same level here, on the same level of indentation. So this function is going to take 5 and 7 like that, and if I run this guy here, it's supposed to be telling me that the sum of these two guys is just 12. Okay, this is great. Now suppose now I want to calculate the average of two nums. Okay, so I'm gonna take num1, and then two numbers is all I need, is just two numbers, and the parameter names are irrelevant, but because they're already here I could just recycle them. So now one of the things that you should definitely take advantage of, that you have already defined the function here, because you can add these numbers, number 2 and number 1, clearly the older in addition doesn't matter, so that would be sum of. If you do it this way, we've already done it here. So why do I need to do it again? It's not good to repeat things that have been already done. So what we can do is to do this, call this number like that, number 2 like that, and here I'm going to ask if this function can actually give me the actual sum result like that. And then I'm going to get the average, avg result like that. So the average here is going to be the sum divided by / the number of arguments, or the number of parameters that we're passing here is 2. And now I need to call this function so I can test it. I have to call it right here outside if it is indented inside, Python is going to think that this function is called from this function, which is incorrect. So now I'm going to do 5 and 7 again, And as you might expect, maybe I need to print the average, double R, current average, like that. And I'm gonna copy this guy here and put it here, like this. And if I run, I'm gonna see that the sum here is gonna be 12 again. And let me just clear my screen so you can see clear results. And let me make it just a tiny bit smaller so we can fit it all in one screen. Okay, so I'm gonna run it, and it just is going to complain about this because apparently some result, so it's basically saying that this line here, line 11, is problematic. Okay, and what also says is that the average of this guy, the average of the function here, has this guy and then unsupported operation, and it's just not liking this. Clearly, what went wrong here is that this function is expecting the sum, and the sum here doesn't come from anywhere because this sum function here did not emit it. So what we need to do to fix this is to actually return this sum here, like, oops, return this sum here like that. And I think if we do it this way, then when you call the add two numbers, this variable here would be will have a copy of the result coming from the add two numbers function, and then the sum here, whatever that number is going to be divided by 2, and it should give me something good. But before we move on, let's just also return here too. We don't need to repeat all these mistakes all at once. Can repeat it once. Okay, so now this is the average results, and I'm just gonna clear my screen again. And as you can see, it says that the sum of the two, one is coming from here, and one is coming because we called this number, so one is coming from here, and then we called this function. Oops, we called this function here again inside the average, which is average being called. So this function is being called twice. That's why you see this guy here. But if I actually change this to make it 7 and 13, you're gonna see, let me clear my screen again. You're gonna see that we're gonna have a sum coming from here, and we're gonna have another sum coming from calling this average function, right? Which is inside, which is coming straight from the add two numbers. And as you can see, 7 and 13 is 20, and now the average is actually 10. So this was something that we suffered from last time. Not having a print statement, not having a return statement is something that is not really would work if your function is expecting to be passing or expected to be passing some value for another function to call. So clearly here, if I remove this guy here, I'm going to have an error. But once we have the sum, then you understand that this sum is going to be passed when this function is called. And then you also realize that we ended up calling the function that we created before here. So we recycled something that we used. Now we're going to see how you can contribute code to your own code and make your code even solid rock, and you remove all the inefficiencies and repetition that might be replicated because of copying and pasting code that can be made more efficiently by calling a function that it's already doing the same job for you. That's all. Thank you so much.